Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into a complete 360-degree look at emergency contraception. We're cutting through all the noise to look squarely at the underlying biology, the cutting-edge medical research, a massive global market, and a deeply divided legal landscape. If you really want to understand where reproductive health stands today, and more importantly, where it's heading tomorrow, you absolutely need to see the whole picture.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. Defining emergency contraception. 2. Innovations in birth control. 3. The billion-dollar market. And finally, 4. The legal battleground.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, Defining Emergency Contraception. It's time to separate science from myth. This brings us to a central question, and honestly, it's one that gets mixed up all the time in public discourse. What is the actual difference between emergency contraception and the abortion pill? It is absolutely vital that we separate medical fact from common fiction here. Because, well, these are two entirely different types of medications with completely different biological purposes. And this brilliantly illustrates the dividing line, as outlined by the Keim Centers. First, we have emergency contraception, like Plan B or Ella. These prevent or delay ovulation, must be taken within a 72 to 120-hour window after unprotected sex, and, crucially, they cannot end an existing pregnancy. On the flip side, the abortion pill is a completely different two-medication regimen made up of mifepristone and misoprostol. It specifically blocks progesterone and causes contractions to end an existing pregnancy and is typically prescribed through the 10th week. Grasping this fundamental difference is essentially the key to the rest of our explainer. To really cement this idea, let's look at levonorgestrel. That's the active synthetic hormone in standard emergency contraception like Plan B. Its primary mechanism of action is, frankly, incredibly straightforward. It prevents pregnancy by simply delaying the release of an egg from the ovary. It's really just a matter of timing. If there's no egg available when sperm are present, fertilization simply cannot happen. It literally acts before pregnancy ever even begins. Moving right along to Section 2, Innovations in Birth Control. Let's look at the clinical future. Right now, there is a super fascinating Phase 2 clinical trial happening in Raleigh, North Carolina. Researchers are testing a brand new approach. They're combining levonorgestrel with meloxicam. Now, what's meloxicam? It is a non-steroidal, anti-inflammatory drug, or an NSAID, that you'd usually see used for conditions like arthritis. By combining this anti-inflammatory with the standard hormone, their goal is to delay ovulation not just by a few days, but by at least 7 days. Plus, and this is a big deal, this trial is specifically targeted at obese women with normal menstrual cycles. They're investigating whether this unique combination can provide reliable, enhanced effectiveness across different body mass indexes, aiming to solve a major gap in current emergency contraceptive care. When we compare the two approaches, the standard method relies purely on a 1.5 milligram dose of levonorgestrel acting on the hormonal pathway. But this experimental combination takes that exact same dose and adds 15 milligrams of meloxicam. It's a real game changer in approach. They're shifting from relying solely on hormones to using biological synergy, combining hormonal action with an anti-inflammatory to create a much longer window of protection. 22. That is the exact number of participants needed for this Phase 2 trial. I bring this up to emphasize just how targeted and carefully monitored early-stage medical research actually is. They are rigorously comparing the effects of this new combination against a placebo across 2 whole menstrual cycles, tracking ovulation through daily urine samples and transvaginal ultrasounds. It is precise, rigorous science that, could eventually redefine our standard of care. All right, let's zoom out a bit for Section 3. The billion-dollar market. Now, what's really interesting about these numbers is the sheer financial scale we're looking at. According to a global industry analysis report, the emergency contraceptive pills market was valued at nearly $947 million back in 2023. By 2032, it's projected to hit $1.44 billion. To put that into perspective, that is a robust compound annual growth rate of just over 5% globally. We are looking at a rapidly expanding pharmaceutical sector here. So what exactly is driving this market well over that billion-dollar mark?
while analysts point to three primary drivers. First off, baseline demand is increasing globally due to a rising incidence of unplanned pregnancies. Add to that the growing education and awareness campaigns, which basically means more people just know these products exist and how to get them. And finally, product innovation, because as clinical trials like the one we literally just talked about yield more effective products catering to broader demographics, the market is naturally going to expand. Which brings us to Section 4, the legal battleground. Let's navigate the state-level laws.
In 2025, we've seen several states introduce or advance legislation aimed at restricting access to contraception. For example, in South Carolina, there were efforts to advance the Unborn Child Protection Act, which seeks to grant legal rights starting at fertilization, a legal concept known as fetal personhood. Over in Indiana, we saw legislative attempts to explicitly carve out specific methods, like IUDs and emergency contraception, from programs that were originally meant to expand birth control access. And in Tennessee, a law was passed that allows healthcare providers, including institutions and insurers, to flat out refuse to participate or pay for healthcare services if those services conflict with their personal beliefs.
Furthermore, the National Women's Law Center reports that broader, proactive measures have faced some significant hurdles. During the 2025 legislative sessions, Right to Contraception Acts, which are designed to enshrine a statutory right to birth control at the state level, either failed to pass, stalled out, or were vetoed by governors in at least 11 different states.
But the legal landscape definitely isn't just moving in one direction. We are also seeing significant proactive measures succeeding across the country. Interestingly enough, in that very same state of Tennessee, the legislature unanimously passed a bipartisan bill explicitly enshrining the right to birth control and fertility care in state law. Meanwhile, in Maryland, advocates successfully helped pass a bill creating a collaborative focused on ensuring the actual, on-the-ground implementation of over-the-counter birth control coverage and doing so without cost sharing for patients.
To truly understand this deeply divided legal battleground, it's really important to hear the underlying rationales straight from the policymakers themselves. When discussing the fetal personhood push in South Carolina, State Senator Richard Cash stated, quote, "I don't see how any of us could be satisfied with having a law on the books that does not actually protect human life, beginning with the biological beginnings of human life, which is fertilization," unquote. This clearly illustrates the ideological foundation that is driving these restrictive legislative efforts. Conversely, when looking at the healthcare refusal law in Tennessee, reproductive rights advocates at the National Women's Law Center argued, quote, "This bill threatens great harm to Tennesseans' ability to access the care they need based on a model bill being shopped around by an anti-reproductive health organization," unquote. They point out that refusal laws like this could result in severe, real-world barriers, especially in places known as pharmacy deserts, where alternative access simply does not exist.
So the crucial point is this. Emergency contraception is like a giant puzzle, and you just can't understand it by looking at only one piece. The fundamental biology is clear. The clinical science is actively pushing for longer, more effective coverage windows. The global market is surging toward $1.5 billion. Yet, at the exact same time, access is being determined by a fiercely contested, state-by-state patchwork of laws. I want to leave you with this final thought. How will the ongoing intersection of this advancing science, a rapidly expanding market, and a deeply divided state politics ultimately shape the reality of reproductive healthcare in the United States over the next decade? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.